Your message for Americans who are concerned about the impact of things such as tariffs on prices?
I'm not going to stand up here and lie to you like my predecessor did about the state of our economy.
When we look at how strong the economy is, it's because of the president's work.
We understand there are people that are hurting. I can assure the American people that the president is very much focused on bringing down the cost of living crisis in this country that was created by the previous administration.
Karine Jean-Pierre had one job answer. Question seems pretty straightforward, right? Well, not if you're a fan of word salads, awkward pauses, and flipping through a binder like you're seeing for the first time. Enter Karoline Leavitt, who steps in and completely shatters that norm, no nonsense, no fumbling, just cold hard with a hefty dose of confidence when she took the stage. It wasn't just a step up, it was a master class get ready because we're about to. Watch Karoline Leavitt dismantle Jean-Pierre in real time, but before we dive, and make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. If you haven't already, thanks now. Let's get into it.
So if you think about the 737,000.
Karine Jean-Pierre's time as White House press secretary was an absolute mess. It felt like watching a day hire fumble through a role. She was never fit for stumbling, struggling, and serving up word salads that left everyone scratching their heads. Fast forward to Karoline Leavitt, and suddenly the press briefing room gets something it hasn't had in years common. Since don't believe me, just compare Karen's disastrous first press conference to Lit's flawless performance. The difference is like night and day. First, let's take a look at Karine Jean-Pierre.
I just want to say a few words about how honored I am to be here with all of you today in this role, in this room, standing behind this podium. I am obviously acutely aware that my presence at this podium represents a few firsts. I am a Black gay immigrant woman, the first of all three of those to hold this position. I would not be here today if it were not for generations of barrier-breaking people before me. I stand on their shoulders. If it were not for generations of barrier-breaking people before me, I would not be here.
You can already feel the awkwardness hanging over the podium as Karine steps up for her first speech. But that's not even the worst part. It's clear she's lacking confidence, barely able to believe her own words, as she avoids making eye contact with the press. And just when you think it can't get more uncomfortable, she starts with the self. Congratulations, reminding everyone once again that she's the first Black gay immigrant woman to hold the role, as if that matters more than actually doing the job. But hey, that's the woke agenda for you. Forget the work, just focus on feelings, race, and gender identity. Now, let's watch Karoline deliver a masterclass on day one in the office.
Good afternoon, everybody. How are we? Good to see all of you. It's an honor to be here with all of you. A lot of familiar faces in the room, a lot of new faces. And President Trump is back, and the golden age of America has most definitely begun. The Senate has already confirmed 5 of President Trump's exceptional cabinet nominees: Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. It is imperative that the Senate continues to confirm the remainder of the president's well-qualified nominees as quickly as possible.
Karoline Leavitt is a breath of fresh air the moment she steps up to the podium. The whole room comes alive. It's a complete contrast to the dark cloud that usually loomed over Karine Jean-Pierre. Leavitt doesn't just walk in, she owns the stage, exuding a confidence that Karine could only dream of. But here's the best part. She doesn't waste time on identity politics. She could have easily made a big deal about being the youngest White House press secretary ever, but she doesn't. If it were Karen, she'd have turned into a personal victory speech. Instead, Leavitt cut straight to the chase, laying out Trump's plans to reset America. No fluff, no distractions, just results. And the press, you can tell they're not used to this level of competence. Some of them are even scrambling, expecting the usual deflections and rehearsed non-answers. But Leavitt isn't here to play games, she's here to lead. And unlike Karen, Leavitt doesn't dodge questions. Oh, and Karen, she's almost always unprepared, lugging around those giant binders to every press briefing, yet somehow still never has the answers. Check out this video.
This is not the norm. The norm is we do get an opportunity to ask the questions to the president about domestic and foreign policy issues in a formal setting at some point. And you choose that point, but we haven't had that opportunity in quite some time.
So I'll say this. It is also unprecedented that a president takes as many shouted questions as this president has. And he has.
I know the last administration, I'll tell you, almost every day I'll just
Okay.
build an
Well, we'll certainly get the data and share that with all of you. I hear, John, I hear your question. I heard Zeke's question. I hear you. I hear you on the press conference, on a formal press conference.
So if you hear the question, Karen, why not just answer it? The reporter was crystal clear. Why wasn't the press getting a formal briefing with President Biden at the time? Simple question, right? But instead of actually addressing it, Karine does what she does best: dodge, deflect, and distract. Instead of giving a real answer, she pivots to some irrelevant talking point about how many times Biden had answered shouted questions, as if that somehow excuses a lack of transparency. Classic Karen. Avoiding accountability while pretending she's actually doing her job. And the press, even they seem over it. At this point, you can practically feel their frustration as she stumbles through her response, reaching for anything that vaguely resembles an answer. But no matter how much she stalls the truth, it's clear Biden wasn't holding real press briefings, and she had no defense for it. So instead, she falls back on empty filler, hoping no one would catch on. But everyone caught on now. Compare that to Karoline Leavitt absolutely shutting down woke reporters.
500 arrests ICE has made so far since President Trump came back into office. Can you just tell us the numbers? How many have a criminal record versus those who are just in the country illegally?
All of them, because they illegally broke our nation's laws and therefore they are criminals as far as this administration goes. I know the last administration didn't see it that way, so it's a big culture shift in our nation to view someone who breaks our immigration laws as a criminal, but that's exactly what they are.
Karoline doesn't just hear the question. She owns that her answers aren't vague, prepped evasions. They're clear, direct, and often leave woke reporters squirming in their seats. No dodging, no deflecting. Just straight facts delivered with the kind of confidence Karine Jean-Pierre could only dream of. But what truly sets Karoline apart is her command of the room. She doesn't fumble through binders or stall for time. She looks reporters straight in the eye and delivers every response is sharp, precise, and backed by real knowledge, leaving the media no space for their usual spin. No wonder the press pool is struggling to keep up their use of soft, meaningless answers. Now they're getting hard-hitting facts. And they can't stand it. Karoline Leavitt isn't just a better press secretary. She's a masterclass in leadership. And it's giving woke journalists sleepless nights. Her answers often come with mic-drop moments like this.
White House official made the decision to bar the AP reporter from the Oval Office and the diplomatic reception room last night.
Well, first of all, let me just set the record straight. It is a privilege to cover this White House. It's a privilege to be the White House press secretary. And nobody has the right to go into the Oval Office and ask the President of the United States questions. That's an invitation that is given. And there are hundreds of outlets on this campus, many of you in this room who don't have the privilege of being part of that pool every single day and getting to ask the President questions. We reserve the right to decide who gets to go into the Oval Office, and you all have credentials to be here, including the Associated Press, who is in this briefing room today.
White House official made the decision to bar the AP reporter from the Oval Office and the diplomatic reception room last night. Well, first of all, let me just set the record straight. It is a privilege to cover this White House. It's a privilege to be the House press secretary, and nobody has the right to go into the Oval Office and ask the President of the United States questions at an invitation that is given them, and there are hundreds of outlets on this campus, many of you in this room, who don't have the privilege of being part of that pool every single day and getting to ask the president questions. We reserve the right to decide who gets to go into the Oval Office. And you all have credentials to be here, including the Associated Press, who is in this briefing room today.
The White House released a 6-page summary back in February. I don't think that was a full accounting necessarily. And Dr. O'Connor in that memo described the president as, quote, a healthy, active, robust 81-year-old male who remains fit to successfully execute the duties of the presidency. I think that is clearly not what the majority of Americans are seeing. And we have a new poll from CBS News that says 72% of registered voters say the president does not have the mental and cognitive health to serve as president. So are you saying that the majority of Americans are misguided and that they just need to trust Dr. O'Connor and take him at his word?
Karoline Leavitt is an absolute powerhouse on the mic, especially when you stack her up against Karine Jean-Pierre every time she steps up to the podium. She's a living reminder of why Biden got voted out of the White House, her confidence, her command of the facts, her actual ability to answer questions. It completely mocks the day nonsense the Biden administration tried to force down our throats. Karoline didn't land this job because of a quota. She didn't check a diversity box or right identity. Politics at the top knows she earned it through intelligence, hard work, and a real understanding of the issues. She proves every single day why she belongs there. And the contrast couldn't be clearer. While Karine Jean-Pierre leaned on scripted talking points and empty cliches, Karoline speaks with authority, without needing a lifeline from a three. Ring binder, she's sharp, prepared, and fearless, a true leader, not a token hire. With every press briefing, she restores credibility to the podium showing. America, what competence really looks like. Jean-Pierre was so out of her depth, she always stumbled when taking off script, like in this clip of the...
To be clear, that $71 billion was from 2015 to 2022, so it wasn't in just 1 year. And it was
$71 billion.
But it wasn't in 1 year, just to be clear.
In one report.
And it was in one report over multiple years, 2015 to 2022.
So are you defending $71 billion in fraud, Peter? That's a lot of money, far too much, and that's why this administration... Why is the media so against cutting waste, fraud, and abuse from the government? I don't get it.
I just want to ask a question.
We won't be deterred. We will not be deterred from people like you and the press who are clearly adamantly opposed to cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. But we know that American taxpayers at home who have been struggling with an inflationary crisis don't want their tax dollars going towards crazy DEI programs in countries.
You can't speak to every poll because you don't have a script for every poll. Classic Karine Jean-Pierre. I remember that press briefing like it was yesterday. She showed up with her carefully prepared script, all set to lecture the press on why President Biden was totally mentally fit to keep leading the country. Never mind the fact that it was painfully obvious to anyone watching that he was clearly lacking the mental sharpness needed, armed with hand-picked quotes from so-called experts. Karine tried to sell the narrative that Biden was in top form, but what she didn't know was that CBS had just dropped a bombshell poll showing 72% of Americans thought Biden was incapable of continuing as president. And since that wasn't in her binder, she had nothing, no response, no defense, just a blank stare and some awkward rambling. Once again, she proved she was totally incapable of thinking on her feet. Meanwhile, a real press secretary like Karoline Leavitt doesn't need a script to handle tough questions. She anticipates them, prepares for them, and most importantly, she answers them too.
The Abraham Accords. The president said he will have
Yeah, thank you. Can you direct traffic? Yeah, thanks.
Let's act like adults here. They are generously offering their time to answer your questions. You don't need to scream at them like a bunch of school children. Ouija, go ahead.
Thank you very much.
People who saw the clip couldn't stop praising the White House press secretary.
The setup for this little sparring match was simple. Karoline Leavitt had just dropped the bombshell that the government had uncovered a massive $71 billion fraud committed by the previous administration. In what seemed like a slip of the tongue, she mentioned that the fraud occurred within a single fiscal year. A reporter wasted no time jumping in to try and take Leavitt off script, pointing out that the $71 billion was actually spread out over 7 years, not just one. Now, if this had been Karine Jean-Pierre, she'd be scrambling, flipping through her binder and desperately searching for an escape hatch. But Karoline, she owned the moment. Instead of backpedaling or stumbling, she turned what could have been an embarrassing slip-up into a personal win with a brutal counterpunch. Are you seriously defending a $71 billion fraud? The room shifted. In an instant, the reporter was on the defensive, and Karoline wasn't finished. She flipped the entire narrative, grilling them on why the press was more focused on a technicality than on actually addressing waste in government finances. It was a masterclass in confidence, turning what could have been a misstep into a total knockout. Karoline commands those press briefings like a boss, just like the time she told the press to stop acting like school children.
So what do you call it here at the White House when 10,000 people illegally cross the border in a single day?
So what do you call it, Peter, when GOP puts forth a wait, no, you can't.
Karine?
I'm answering. Okay, we're going to move
You're
on.
answering the question.
No, we're moving on.
Karine,
Moving.
please.
In the back.
Now, you said you were stopping the flow at the border.
No. I tried to
10,000
answer, Peter, I
okay.
tried to answer the question. You stopped me. Let's go.
I'm going to say, actually, with the border, how many people coming into this country illegally is enough?
I know the numbers, but enough for what?
enough just to stop the flow.
As I mentioned, this is a problem that's been around for some time now, for decades, a broken system.
People who saw the clip couldn't stop praising the White House press secretary. One person wrote, "They act like school children and then get treated like school children. Thank you, Mrs. Leavitt." Another added in the end, the woman called on, took a moment to thank Karoline, our press secretary, is definitely in charge, as it should be. Karoline is amazing. She had that homeroom teacher energy. And look, they listened just like children. Another commenter jumped in, noting her control over the press. Did you notice that at the very next press conference, nobody was yelling out questions? Somewhere in awe of her authority, especially considering her age. A 27-year-old is telling older people in the media how to act like adults now. Let's see how Jean-Pierre handled reporters when she was totally overwhelmed.
He's been to the border, and since he took office...
When did he go to the border?
Since he took office, the President Biden has been taking action to fix our immigration system and secure our border. But, that we're not seeing that from Republicans. We're not seeing a willingness to work with us on fixing a situation that's been around for decades now.
And just like that, she finds an escape hatch to dodge the question. Classic Jean-Pierre. But you know what's worse? Her pathetic attempt to control the press during briefings. Instead of calmly but firmly handling a journalist who pushes back, she resorts to petty tactics, straight up refusing to answer their questions as some kind of punishment. How childish is that? Imagine being so incapable of handling scrutiny that your response is to stonewall the press like a sulking teenager. This isn't leadership, it's cowardice. A White House press secretary is supposed to be accountable, not vindictive. But Karen operated like a petty bureaucrat, punishing reporters for daring to expose her evasions. No wonder people rank Karoline Leavitt far above her. Leavitt doesn't run from tough questions. She faces them heat, and she doesn't play games, retaliate, or treat the press like misbehaving children. Instead, she engages debates and actually answers questions. That's the difference between someone who earned their role and someone who was handed it. Unfortunately, not only does Karine dodge questions, she resorts to lies.
She was almost smiling when she said it too, KJP. Look, Ben Dominich joins me now. I mean, Ben, we know that Joe Biden hasn't been to the border. Why the bold-faced lie?
I'll tell you exactly why she told that bold-faced lie. Because she's completely incompetent as White House press secretary. She wasn't just misinformed or mistaken. She knew the truth, but chose to dodge it. Why? Because admitting that Biden had never been to the border would have been political suicide. She was terrified of the backlash, the media firestorm, and the brutal reality that her party was staring down a potential electoral disaster. So instead of telling the truth, she did what she always does: evade, deflect, and deceive. She knew that acknowledging Biden's absence at the border would expose the administration's total failure on immigration. She knew it would give Republicans even more ammo to hammer the border crisis home. And most of all, she knew it would be a terrible look for Biden, who spent years dodging responsibility. So she panicked. Instead of standing her ground and giving an honest answer, she lied through her teeth, all to protect an administration that had no defense to begin with, and leave it to Karoline Leavitt to call her out for.